Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Baldoni, and today I'm talking with the amazing Elizabeth Gray Saunders, who is the founder and CEO of Real Life E, which is a time management coaching company. I always almost accidentally say couching company. It's not a couching company, it's a coaching company that empowers individuals who feel guilty, overwhelmed, and frustrated to feel peaceful, confident, and accomplished. And Elizabeth was also named one of the world's top 30 time management professionals by Global Gurus. So we have a special one with us here today. And I've also had the blessing of working with you personally.
Yes, which
a couple
was
years
wonderful.
ago. Like
Yeah.
How are you?
When you're pregnant with your little one, your most recent little one. So yeah, overall I'm doing well. I think going along with everyone in the world, it's been kind of a stressful time. So I'll put it out there. Like, let's be honest. But I think all things considered, I'm doing well. And we'll talk about this more. But I think one of the reasons I'm doing well is I've been practicing so much being present in the moment. I literally have this like new mantra of like, there's no past, there's no future, there's just the present. So here now, in this moment with Emily, I'm doing fantastic.
And that's an amazing life practice that we try to learn anyway, right? So how amazing that you use the opportunity to do that. It's easy to go crazy.
Yes.
Two stuck over here or two stuck over
here. Yeah, exactly. Well, and what I've been finding is with what's been going on. And first of all, I just want to start out by validating, because there's like a lot of women that will be listening to this, a lot of moms. This is hard and you're not alone. I really felt like that was an important way to start this conversation. I already knew this intuitively, and because I work with clients around the world, but there was a mental health index that came out recently by a group called Total Brain. And basically employees of companies, they monitor their health, like their mental health each day. And so that's how they make this index. And they were saying from February to June, there was over a 50% increase among employed people in terms of risk of depression, about a 50% increase in terms of risk of PTSD, 40% increase in terms of risk of anxiety disorder. And for women, that was actually down from May. It was like 27% higher in May when they were still doing homeschool for their kids. And like 20% higher in May, and 27% higher in terms of depression risk, and 20% higher in terms of anxiety risk, because they were trying to do their work and also homeschool their kids and all the things. So I just want to start out by just validating, and we're going to talk about so many amazing tips to help you. But in that, I didn't want anything to come across as judgmental, not like, oh, well, you should just be so happy and perfect and like work out all the time and everything should be amazing. And just say, you know what, like this is real, and let's be gentle with ourselves, even as we move things forward in the process.
Thank you so much for saying that. That's so important, because I think, a lot of us struggle with finding a rhythm that works for us, and daily structure and schedules in a normal world, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Now, the world has been upside down for a few months, or, however you see it. Maybe it's coming right side up now. We'll see where we end up. But it's been a lot.
Yes, it has been.
Physically hold, to mentally hold, to emotionally hold. And like you said, for many of us, that means that we've had to stay at home and work from home. Many of the people that will be watching this are parents. So yes, they've had their kids at home, whether they're young ones like mine and feel absolutely impossible to spend 24/7 with, and others have older kids that actually need full-on homeschooling, and there you are teaching them French. So it's been a tremendous amount to hold all of a sudden. And I feel when I speak to especially friends of mine that are that are parents, that they're just crumbling and they're not
Oh,
sure
yeah.
what to do. And how do you
Yeah.
learn how to find
Yeah.
structure when
Yeah.
most of us are already struggling finding that?
Right, totally. No, and I hear what you're saying, and it's real. And we just want to start out by validating that. So anything you're
Great.
feeling, it's okay to feel it. It's okay to say it's hard because it is. Like, so
Right.
let's just be real, no judgment in terms of where you're
Yes.
at. Because I think that's the hard part when you're like, I'm usually such a positive person, or I'm usually so put together, and I'm not right now. Well, welcome to the world right now, because none of us are.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're going to start there. Then in terms of action steps you can take, and this is so important because even in the midst of all that's going on, we still have choices about how we spend our time and how we choose to respond to what's going on. And it's essential we take those opportunities for choices so we don't fall into learned helplessness. And what learned helplessness is from a psychological point of view is it's when you sustain some kind of trauma. So you were in a situation where you had no way of escape. So kind of the like one thing they talk about is with little baby elephants, like they put them in a chain on their leg when they're little to teach them that they have no way of escape. So then when they're big elephants in the circus, you don't even have to restrain them. You can just like use like a little like rope that they could totally, tear down, but their minds have learned I have no power. And so they don't use it.
Wow.
And that happens to people too. So maybe you were in a situation this spring where you couldn't work, where for whatever reason you couldn't work, or maybe depending on restrictions in different places, like you couldn't leave your house or you couldn't exercise or whatever it is that you couldn't do. And that was a real reality. If you don't use your autonomy to do what you can do now, you end up having this little rope you could break out of, but you're acting like it's a ball and chain. And so you want to make sure that even in little ways, you have a sense of autonomy. So that might be as simple, and we'll start talking about not being overwhelmed or structure. It could be as simple as saying, I'm going to get up at this time and drink a cup of coffee, make my cup of coffee before I start the day. And that might be it to start. Like just, I get up at 7 o'clock and I make a cup of coffee for myself before I do anything for anyone else. It could look like I go on a walk every day. Like just every day, I make sure I do a 20-minute walk, whatever that looks like for you. And these are little steps that we take to say, no, no, I can do things. No, there are things I have control over. No, not all of my power is taken away from me. And then those baby steps that can then lead up to bigger things that we do to benefit ourselves. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of it also thought in the beginning that, oh, we're going to crush this. We're going to be
Right.
amazing at this. And
Right.
then, I mean, I know I wasn't. And then I was a little heartbroken. I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I can't do it all. So to allow
Right.
yourself to start
Right.
simple, because then
Yes.
you're putting it, that, you're setting yourself up for success. I assume that's.
Exactly. Exactly. Setting yourself up for success and like honoring the fact that it is a difficult time. So you need more emotional space because like just personal examples. So like I'm usually a super happy, resilient person. I'm not prone to depression or anxiety or anything like that. But this literally happened this week, and I'll just share just so people don't feel ashamed of anything they feel. So I'm a super happy, resilient person. But one of the things I've found to be essential in this time is to get up and exercise first thing in the morning as basically a buffer against depression, to be honest. I'm not prone to that, but this time has been kind of a doozy for all of us. So I find if I get up, I get outside, I'm physically active, I feel good and I have a good start to the day, and the rest of the day is kind of kicked off well. So I have, all our pools have been shut down. I'm a swimmer. So before this all happened, I was swimming 4 to 5 times a week in an indoor pool. But our pools are still shut down in here in Michigan, and we don't know when they'll be open again. So I switched over to swimming in lakes. And I have a system down of there's one lake that's about 20 minutes away that I sometimes swim with people on my swim and triathlon team. And then there's another little lake where it's safe for me to swim on my own. It's about 10 minutes away, but it's like buoyed off. I usually go at about 6:30 in the morning. It's like me and the ducks, and I do my little thing and I'm like, all is well with the world. So here's what happened yesterday morning. And it sounds crazy, but it happened. And again, just validate. So I'm doing my thing. I'm like, okay, I'm up and I'm at him. I felt a little tired, but I was like, I'm going to go to the beach. I'm going to feel good myself. So I'm driving to the car, going to the beach. I get there and it's barricaded off. There's caution tape everywhere. And I'm like, like,
Free fall.
like I was like, I just want to cry right now. Like I just want to cry right now. And like I didn't know, like your brain starts extrapolating. You're like, is every single lake in Michigan shut down? Like I didn't know what happened. And like my routine was off and like my brain was like,
The one
uh,
thing you had control over.
yeah, exactly. And so that happened. I definitely cried. I will be honest. And it's not and my brain wasn't thinking creatively at that point. It was just like, I was
Yeah.
supposed to swim and I can't swim and you just barricaded me off. So I ended up finding out it was not like a statewide thing. It was that particular area for whatever reason they felt they had to do that. And my later in the day, my brain was able to think of other alternatives. And I was like, I think there's this place 20 minutes away that I can go. So I went there this morning. All was well with the world. I got in my swim. It was
Mm.
amazing. Um, but this is real, and you're going to have moments where you even thought through your routine, you thought through what you thought you were in control over, what would keep you mentally healthy, and then you have this stuff come up. And I mean, it took me probably over an hour to recover from that. I was literally crying. And so you have to give yourself space and margin in your schedule for those moments when all of a sudden this news comes through that you're like, oh no, really? Like that just happened. And like to process that, to come to terms with it. And I didn't start work completely on time yesterday because of all that happened there, but it was okay. And I was like, you know what? That was a hard thing for you. Just start where you're at. You're starting work late, but that's okay. You do the work you can today. You have a good night. Like I was able to like do some weightlifting with little weights and stuff in the evening. And I'm like, you try again tomorrow morning and see what you can do. And so with our creating structure but being flexible, we have to create that emotional space for these feelings that we're feeling that like I've
Mm.
never cried over a workout ever. But
Yeah.
that just happened because it's like the cumulative, just like, but that was my one thing.
It's like yet another thing that, that doesn't go our way.
Yes, exactly.
I think a lot of, I mean, now we go into like parent territory. I don't know how it links with
Yeah.
time management, but creating that emotional cushion, like making space to
Yes.
have those feelings, which I could not agree more. That we need to do that for ourselves. How do you do that when you have a
Yes.
house full of kids that are also feeling their feelings? I think that's a tricky thing because you need to hold
Yeah.
space for their stuff that will
Yes.
undoubtedly come up, and then you have your own stuff. I don't know if you've talked to any clients like that, and
Yeah.
I have a plan for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I do have a lot of coaching clients with families, and it's been super challenging. Like I had one coaching
Yeah.
client, she's like, I don't understand all these people saying they're catching up on Netflix and books because I'm definitely not. Like she's like, I'm working full time, my husband's working full time, and we've got like kids that we're trying to teach them how to do school. And she's like, yeah, no, definitely no Netflix catching up. Um, so in terms of having space for emotions, different people have different scenarios depending on the age of their kids, the situation of their house, also what's allowed outdoors. But
Yeah.
I would encourage some kind of physical space at some point, even if it's just go to different sides of the house if that's safe to do depending on the age of your kids. Um, just even like if you're able to like be outside, just having, and sometimes, little kiddos, they're so adorable. They just play and do their thing. Like they don't, sometimes we engage, but sometimes you can just even be a few feet away where you can see them, but like you can be like in your own little bubble for a while.
Mhm.
If you're married or have a significant other and you can switch off where it's just like, hey, this is your night to just like get out and do something, anything. Maybe it's going on a run or whatever that looks like. All those little things help to create some physical distance. And creating that space in an intentional way and a physical way protects us from creating that in a psychological way. So what I mean by that is if you do not give yourself permission to have some physical space where you guilt free are like away, you'll start creating psychological distance even though you're right by each other. So that might be like looking at your phone all the time, even if your kid is in front of you. That might be just like zoning out and not being present. It might be even like starting fights. Like people are a lot more argumentative than they usually are because the anxiety is so high, the stress is so high. And so something that typically wouldn't be a big deal at all, you might find yourself yelling at your kids or your spouse. Um, so you need to have some separation. And then something I have found really helpful and I recommend to others is even some kind of journaling. So I have started to keep a digital diary of what's going on during this time, and it actually helps me sleep better at night. So before I go to bed, I just like type up like, this is what happened, so it's like, I went to go swimming and then like it was shut down. There's caution tape anywhere and I could go to jail for 90 days if I swam, and I was so upset. Like, so just like having that little journal of like, this happened, this is what went on, this is how I recovered, helps you get those emotions out there in healthy ways. And so you're not just holding it all in your head and then waking up in the middle of the night or just being angry at your kids or your significant other. And so I think it's creating some physical space, recognizing everyone needs it, journaling if you can, if you're meditation, prayer, whatever that looks like, exercise, give yourself permission to do those things. You're not a bad parent. You need it to be psychologically healthy so that then you can be present with your kids. So you can actually be excited when they want to talk to you versus like, I've had enough, like get away from me.
Yeah. We were talking about that over email actually earlier when you said that it's so important to use certain activities to better your mental health.
Yeah.
And you just kind of touched on it. So let's
Yeah.
dive into that a little bit. Why?
Yeah.
Kind of obvious in a sense, I guess, but why is it so important to find these tools to just work on our mental health so that we can get things done? How are those
Right.
things?
Yeah. So basically, how they're interconnected is that if you're super anxious or you're super stressed out or you're depressed, you're not going to be getting much done. Like if you're depressed and you can't even hardly get out of bed, like I know some people, they usually are up at 5 a.m. that like we're getting up at 10 a.m. And with not going to the office and not having the accountability, or maybe you're used to going to the gym in the morning and you can't go, like if your mental health is off, you're not going to be focused. You're not going to be productive. You will have more conflict. So it's so critical that your mental health is in a good place for you to get stuff done. In terms of the basics that I recommend everyone do right now, have some kind of physical activity, preferably outside if you can, because that changes your brain chemistry. Like even 5 minutes of outdoor activity provides happy brain chemicals. And a lot of us, I'm sure, have experienced, sometimes you'll be like so upset about something, you're like, the world is terrible, bah! And then you like go, like for me, it's like playing soccer or swimming or running. And like an hour later, you're like, oh, everything's fine. It's not a big deal, like, and you just have to get it out of you. And the same with your kids, like when they're all squirrely, send them outside to the yard if you have a yard, or like to some place where they can run around. And a lot of times it's just excess energy that they need to get out of their system. So everyone, physical activity, preferably outside every day. That could be with your kids, and they're in a stroller, bless you. It could be at a park. It could be you on your own. It could, be little videos you do before you start the day, but you want that. Then you need that mental processing time. So maybe it looks like meditation. Maybe it looks like journaling. Maybe it looks like talking to a friend, like just calling a friend and be like, oh my gosh, I gotta like vomit out all this stuff and like talk it through. And if you need that, that's okay. And that's essential for you. And so I know even for myself that like one of my highest priorities right now is mental health. Because if I'm stable, if I'm calm, then I can show up for my clients in a good way. I can show up in my relationships in a good way. If my mental health is not there, like nothing else at this point really kind of matters. And so we have to fight hard to stay in a good place. And one other thing I'll share real quick, someone said to me this past weekend, which I thought was so beautiful, is he's like, you have to be fluid, because if you're too rigid, you'll break. And so I've been trying to imagine myself like a little birch tree or something where you have roots, you have conviction, but like it's not like I need to burst into tears every morning that the one beach I was at is closed. It's like, okay, Elizabeth, well, where can you still go? Like, what is still possible? So I have enough give to be like, okay, like it's fine. Or even with your kids, like maybe they're not doing setting the table exactly the way you prefer, uh, but it's good enough. Like, you need that flex.
Right. Um, that's so great because I think many of us, I mean, I can really only speak for myself, but I've connected enough with friends of mine to know that it's a thing that we believe that now we have to do this so right and we have to still get things done. How can I continue life the way that it looked before, only in quarantine and in my home? Like I'm going to still get everything done, and that suddenly becomes more important than our mental health. I love
Yeah.
mental
Yeah.
health first so that you
Oh,
can
yeah.
have a container that holds
Yes.
all of those things, but as
Yes.
many as we can hold.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I would say mental health, self care first,
Yeah.
everything else after. And you're going to reduce conflict. You're going to increase your energy. Like, you're going to create less drama by taking care of yourself. Oxygen mask on first. Um, and you have to work a lot harder at it than usual, like a lot harder than usual. And I'm just surprised how long this is lasting in terms of everything going up and down and being so uncertain. And the truth is, we don't know how long it will.
Right.
And so we can't tie our psychological health to a date. And
Mhm.
we also can't, um, in my personal opinion, we shouldn't just wait for things to work out the way they were. We need to find new options. Like, so for me, if I was just waiting for the pools to open, I'd be totally depressed. But I was like, okay, I never have swum in a lake before. I don't know how to do this. I'm going to figure it out, and I got a wetsuit and I was like, let's do this. Like, and so that's what keeps me going versus like, but it has to be the way it was. Like, it has to be exactly that. I was like, how can I get as close as possible to get what I need? So, yeah.
Detachment. We really get to practice detachment.
Yeah.
So just a little bit about that flow, because I know many people who will be watching this, they just like me that want the tools of, so how do I get I mean, we're going to get into their questions soon because they're so great.
Yeah.
But I want to talk a little bit more about finding that balance between, if you create a plan for yourself to get a few things done the next day, how can you still invite for that flow to happen,
Right.
especially for parents, for those of us who have our kids at home. We can create a schedule and we know that we will not be able to follow that exactly the way
Yeah. Yeah.
we have to be so fluid and flexible and
Yep.
open to changes. How do you find that balance? Because I'm sure that's
Yeah.
also mental work.
Yeah, for sure. So I would say right now, especially with all the flex we have and everyone being home and all this stuff, I would see a lot of planning more as like a checklist instead of a schedule. So what I mean by that is, in the past, you might have been able to say, okay, we all get up at this, like I get up this time, and then 30 minutes later, I get up my kids, we get them ready for school, and then they're at the bus stop at this time, and then I start my first meeting then, and it was like very like you knew exactly when things went, and you knew when you needed to leave to pick them up, and when you took them to ballet or whatever it was. Like you had a lot of quite discrete time chunks.
Mhm.
Now there's not as much structure, and there's more variability, and so I recommend more like a checklist sort of a thing. So for example, it might look like get up around 7 o'clock, and then you might have down like coffee, breakfast, morning stretches, whatever that looks like for you, or morning walk. And then you might have down like get up the kids, uh, breakfast for them, tidy the house, go outside and run around, and just more have like a sense of like, okay, this is generally what we're doing. I don't know minute to minute how long it will take. Maybe they're going to take longer eating breakfast. Maybe it'll be shorter. Maybe they'll get up later. Maybe they'll get up earlier, and kind of like relish that a little bit, that there's actually some grace in that. Like, kids kind of like being a little more chill. So if you can not be super annoyed at them that it's taking 20 minutes to tie their shoe, that's a good thing. And so,
Yeah.
so have like a checklist. And then what I would say also is that you want to just have like low expectations. And so what I mean by that is maybe before lunch, maybe it just looks like everyone getting up, having breakfast, getting dressed, going outside, and maybe you do like one to do item on your thing. And then you have lunch. And then if you have little kids that take a nap, like maybe they take a nap, and then you have one or two things you do during their nap time. And then they're up and you're just like, okay. And then I spend time with them. And then we're getting ready for dinner. We have dinner. And maybe after they're in bed, there's like one thing I do. And I know that sounds so small, but cumulatively, if you get like 4 or 5 things done, like an email written or something else done, that's good. And it's okay to be like, that's kind of what's happening right now. And if you have the ability to have some kind of childcare, then of course during those times when your kids are with someone else, like you can pack in more things or get more stuff done. But you got to have grace with yourself and be like, okay, I'm keeping momentum here, but I'm not going to be as productive as I was before, and that's okay. That's just like the reality. Yeah.
Yeah. We need to accept that. So let's get into some community questions here.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love it.
And this is such a great one. We've touched on it a little bit, but let's go back to it. There was one woman here. She said, "How do you work around unpredictable highs and lows in energy?"
Yeah.
So you're excited and you actually have a plan for the next day,
right?
And the reality of things just hit you, and boom, you don't have the energy.
Right.
I think we all felt very up and down.
Right. Right.
I mean, you never know what to expect.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Level. So how do we handle that?
Yeah. So first of all, I love what you said about having a daily plan. So some people don't even have a daily plan. So what that means for people that maybe that's not your construct, it's just that we've thought through the next day. So if you have kiddos, it might be that you thought through if there's an activity that you're going to do with them or taking them to or whatever that looks like. If you're working, it could be that you thought of a couple things that you're going to get done that day. So just having a plan is a great start. And I also think having some kind of morning routine, even though it might get messed up like mine yesterday, is a good idea. So you have a sense of, okay, when I get up, this is what I'm doing first, or this is what this looks like. So that's the first step, because that will naturally help you to be less thrown off track by energy levels, because you have a sense of how things go. So that's step number one. Step number two, in terms of energy levels, I think that we want to give ourselves permission to make gentle progress. So what I mean by that is, let's say you're having a lower energy day and you're just like not super productive. That doesn't mean you can't do anything. Maybe it means you start out and you do a couple things, and maybe you need to take a 15-minute nap. Maybe you do. And then you come back and you do a little bit more. You can do something like Pomodoro. So that's the concept of 25 minutes of focused work time and then a 5-minute break. You can set a little timer and be like, okay, I'm going to focus for 25 minutes and do something, and then 5 minutes off. If it's like 2:30 or 3 in the afternoon and you just can't focus at all, maybe that's a great time to go on a walk and just be like, you know what? I'm going to enjoy the nice weather. I'll get outside, maybe play with my kids. And so a lot of it, I think, is and then I can come back and see what I can do. So a lot of it is, I think, just honoring your body rhythms and also not getting like all or nothing. So not being like, oh, I'm having a low energy day, I can't do anything that I plan to do. It's like, okay, well, maybe I can't do everything, but there's still a few things I can do. I can move forward. And when I need a break, I can honor that. And there may be other days where you don't need a walk or you don't need a nap or anything like that. And other days where you need multiple ones. That's okay. Like, it's fine.
I love that. As you know from our time working together,
Yeah.
I tend to get really overwhelmed. Like when I have very low energy, and then I start thinking about all the things that I was supposed to get done, and it just like builds up and it becomes this big mountain. And now I'm paralyzed and I can't move and I can't prioritize. And we want to stop that spin before it happens.
Right. Exactly.
Things that we can do, and immediately I start doing something while being gentle
Yeah.
with yourself, the overall feeling is just so much better.
Yeah, exactly.
Pile on
And
top.
it's and I think it's letting go of that idea of like that your plan is a test. Like your plan is not a test. It's not like you get an A on the test if you get everything done on your plan. Your
Yeah.
plan is a guide, it's a roadmap. And if you get only 50% of the things done, okay, there's always tomorrow. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a few things that like you absolutely have to get done at an exact time, but most stuff, it's okay. It's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Like, just move it to the next day.
So true. How do you balance maintaining a healthy social life and schoolwork? Of course, now I mean, who has a social life? But there's a lot of
Yeah.
Zooming,
Yeah, exactly.
FaceTiming and that stuff. And of course, we still want to have a
Yeah.
social.
Okay, so it said social life and schoolwork. Is that correct?
You said school/work.
School
So
slash work. Okay, so she must be working, school, and social life.
yeah,
Okay, beautiful. Okay, so how about we start with work? So you probably have certain hours you're supposed to be working, so work those. And I know that sounds basic, but especially when people are working from home, that's not so basic because you can get all caught up in your phone or anything else. And like things like if you have little WhatsApp extension on your browser, take it off now. Like time coach's orders because it's not helping you. So basically, you need to have a container for your work. So decide what your hours are, do those. And I would honor them. Like some of my coaching clients, they find their phones too tempting. They keep their personal phones in a different place while they're working. Um, and they wait till they're done with work to like respond to messages or lunch break or that sort of thing. So number one, like you need to have a box container for when you're working. Number two, in terms of school, and I do coach some people that are in grad school as well as working. Again, we make like little containers. So for some of my coaching clients that are getting an MBA, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night is our nights when they work on their schoolwork, and then they have some prep that they do like Saturday, Sunday. And so you just create a little spot, just like you were working, where it's like, oh, okay, like I need to set aside time in order to get these things done. And then it's that box and that frame for it, and you don't need to be thinking about school all the time, but just when you're in that slot. Um, then in terms of the social life, that kind of fits around those things. So if you have some nights when you're not doing schoolwork or sometimes on the weekends, schedule something, Zoom or whatever, hike or whatever you're able to do. With your phone, like watch how much you're on social media and how much you're texting. And if you need to, like if you do the Pomodoros, you can do the 25 minutes focus time, 5-minute break. And during the 5-minute break, you can catch up on things. But I think a lot of it is the planning and having boxes for things, because if you don't have boxes, that's when it's just a mushy mess where you're like, should I be working now? Should I be doing school? Can I talk with a friend? I don't know. And then it gets really, really overwhelming.
and you also get nothing done really.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Lots of questions about procrastination.
Mm-hmm.
So, basically, how do we control or avoid procrastination? And then someone had a really interesting question. They said, can procrastination be productive if we work best under pressure? Which
Right,
is
right.
really interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So let's see. So in terms of that question, can procrastination be productive?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes. I mean, if you like, I'll give an example of where I think I wouldn't even call it procrastination, but what I would say a certain strategy works. So like, let's say I'm going out of town and I'm packing. I tend to do most of my packing the night before just because I'm most motivated to do it then. And if I did it like 5 days before, it would probably feel weird. Plus, like you couldn't put in half the stuff because you're still using it. So I don't even see that as procrastination. That's just like, it makes sense and I'm motivated at that time. I would say if you're a chronic procrastinator and you do that on big things, it's not helping you because most of the time you're super stressed out thinking about it the whole time. You're just not doing anything on it. And you don't do as well on whatever you're trying to do because you didn't give yourself enough time. So you don't really end up doing your best work or working best under pressure. You just got it done. So I think there's a balance there. And in terms of strategies, I find why we tend to procrastinate is twofold. One is sometimes it's emotional. We feel uncomfortable about what we're working on, or we feel guilty that we haven't started on it already, or we're not sure what to do. And so if you're feeling those feels, you need to identify, well, what is that emotion that's making me have that response? And then address that. Like maybe you're not sure what to do, and that's a great like flag to say, oh, I need to ask for help. Or maybe you feel guilty you haven't started on it, and you can talk to yourself about, well, I'm going to only feel more guilty if I keep delaying. So the best strategy is moving forward. So the first thing is the feels part, which is usually a lot of it. And then the second part is just having clarity. So a lot of people, when they avoid something, they don't actually know what the steps are. And so if they just write down the steps, like let's say it's a presentation. So it might look like review emails that have information on it. Then, work on the slides, run this past my boss, make the edits, practice with my colleague, do the presentation. And by just simply writing it down and then giving yourself permission to work on those over different days in your daily plan or your weekly plan, then usually you stop procrastinating, because it's just more the like, I don't know what to do. That is what kind of gets you all wound up there.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I can completely relate. So how to make and stick to a timetable that you do make for yourself?
Yep.
Just some simple steps. I mean, of course, it depends on who you are and what you have to do, but some simple steps in creating a timetable and then
Yep.
getting yourself to stick to it.
Yeah, exactly. I'd be happy to share. And if they want a lot more details, in my book, How to Invest Your Time Like Money, it talks a lot about like the details of weekly and daily planning. But in terms of the basics, if you're looking like, let's say at a weekly timetable, what I recommend is that certain things we want as recurring events. So that might be when you're going to bed, when you're exercising, when you're doing self-care, like the meditation, prayer, journaling, whatever that looks like, that you just have set up as recurring events in your schedule. If you have certain things for your kids that need to happen at certain times, you can do the same thing. And you can just do repeat on Google Calendar, whatever you use. After that, in terms of your schedule, it's going to vary based on what you have going on. But if you are working and you have certain focus things you need to get done, I recommend having blocks of focus time in your schedule. So if you're more early bird, you might want to consider that in the morning. If you're more creative later, you would do that later. So it might look like 3 to 5 or 8 to 10. This is when I'm getting focused work done. And you can break that down for the different parts of your life, depending on how much you have going on and what it makes sense to systematize on a daily basis. So you start there, and I recommend only putting the things in your schedule you actually want to commit to. So if it's more like aspirational, but not what you're actually going to do, don't put it in there and just feel guilty all the time. Just having the things that you really want. And in terms of following it, a lot of it is practice. So every time you do something in a certain way, you're creating a neural connection in your brain that helps your brain know how to do something and creates a certain pattern of behavior. So when you get up and you get your coffee, or when you get up and you exercise, or whatever that looks like, you're creating that path, and that makes it easier for you. If you're finding that you're struggling with following it, then you need to ask yourself some questions. So one might be, is this even realistic? Like, was I trying to fit 100 things in the day and they just don't fit, or they take longer than expected? If that's the case, then you need to narrow down your schedule down to a more realistic point of view. I'd take things off or give yourself more time. If some of it is you're lacking maybe motivation, then you really need to ask yourself, do I actually want to do this? Like, is this actually a priority to me? Or is it something I think I should do, or other people think is a good idea, but isn't actually like authentic to myself? And then if you're struggling with procrastination, then again, you want to break things down, maybe use Pomodoro's 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off, and see how that works for you. And the ideal is that the structure is supporting you and making it easier for you to do what you believe to be important, not that it's like oppressing you. So I like to say your schedule is your servant, not your master. So the schedule is there to help you remember what you want to do and the order you want to do it in, not to make you feel like, oh my gosh, it's a test and I have to do everything on time or I failed.
I love that. I love what you said, that you, like, make sure that it is authentic to you.
Yes.
That's another
Yes.
thing that I really had to focus on too. Why am I doing this? Why do I
Mhm.
feel the need to do this? And of course, there are things that we just do need to do. And if we
Yeah.
have things that we need to do, but the things that I choose to put in my schedule, they need to serve me and serve
Mhm.
others.
Yes.
We can just get overly ambitious and then we feel like we've failed at the end of the day.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
can't ever catch up.
Yeah. Like, for example, I've seen people and they're like, oh, this is my morning routine. It literally has like 20 steps. And you're like, it's probably too much. How would you narrow it down just a little bit more? You'll be happier.
It's okay to start simple.
Yeah.
It's totally okay to start simple. And then another question was how to get motivated. But I feel like you were just touching on it now.
Right.
Like
Right.
why
Right.
like why do you want to be motivated by something? Is it the right thing for you? Is it something that is authentically serving you in your life? Is there
Right.
anything you can add to that about motivation?
Yeah. Well, and I would say like there's little tips. So just emotionally, like even if you have yourself in a pretty place. So for example, where I live, there's like a little yard out front. And when I'm doing just admin work, I can take my laptop outside and it's so nice. I can sit under a tree. So if that motivates you, maybe sit on your front porch or something, or that sort of thing, or give yourself a cup of coffee or something that makes you feel good and kind of works overall can be helpful. Another thing that's motivating is to think about the positive impact of what you're doing. So how it will benefit other people. Or you can think about the consequences if you don't do it, how that will feel. But then another thing that's really important is not to always wait for motivation, because often once we get started, the motivation comes. Just because like you're in the groove and it happens. But if you're like, I need to be so excited about answering email before I answer it, like you're never going to answer email. Like, I don't know who gets excited about that, but I sure don't. So it's like, no, I'm just going to get started. And once I get into it, it will work out. So
I love that. Oh, that is super helpful for me too. That's so great. This is so cool. This is so great. Thank you so much for your time and for doing this with us, Elizabeth, because this is something that helps everybody, anybody.
Yes.
Especially now. If people want to connect with you or see your work, find you online.
The best place is my website, which is reallifee.com. So that's REALLIFE, and then another E as in Elizabeth.com.
Amazing.
Hey.
It is such a gem. So if this just worked with you in the right way, listening to this and watching this, I highly recommend checking out Elizabeth's books. There are multiple books and they're really, really great. And just everything that you do is so great and comes from a clear and loving and kind place, which is just the coolest thing, because these kind of things can be very stressful.
Oh, absolutely.
And,
Yeah, well, thank you. It's a joy to know you, Emily, and to have worked with you and to connect now. And again, I just want to encourage everyone, like, come at all of this from a place of grace. Like, you're doing your best. Like, every day is a new day. Maybe like yesterday, I totally cried my little eyes out about my little swimming place. And then today was a new day and it was fine. And so like, forgive yourself quickly, forgive others quickly, like, and keep moving.
And be ready that every day, each day is going to be different than the next.
Yes.
Lots of ups and downs. Just ride that wave together.
Yep, exactly.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. We'll see you soon.
Bye.